Look at the word for three. Hindi, teen, Persian, se, Latin, tres, English, three. 4 languages, thousands of miles apart, and the same word underneath all of them. That's a family. They're all Indo-European, Hindi included. Now here's 3 in Tamil. Nothing. No link. Not a cousin. Not even a distant one. A completely separate family tree. Tamil is Dravidian. So are Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam. Around 250 million speakers who share almost nothing at the roots with the languages of the north. 2 language families, 1 country. And the southern one was almost certainly here first because when Sanskrit arrived, it picked up sounds from the Dravidian languages already on the ground, including the curled tongue consonants Hindi still uses today. The line between North and South India isn't only on the map, it runs straight through the dictionary. Welcome to the Airlearn Language Show. Today, we're going to follow that line back to the migrations that drew it, forward to the political conflicts it caused. Because this isn't just an ancient linguistic story. It's one that was still producing street protests and shutdown in India less than 60 years ago. And before we go in, if any of the languages in this video sends you down a rabbit hole, Airlearn teaches several of them, including Hindi. Contextual, practical, built to stick. Links in the description. Let's establish the scale of difference because it's bigger than most people realize. When linguists say 2 languages belong to different families, they mean they have no shared ancestor, at least not one that's traceable within the last several thousand years. English and Hindi sound nothing alike, but they're actually cousins. Go back far enough and you find Proto-Indo-European, the ancestor language that produced both of them, along with Persian, Greek, Russian, Spanish, and dozens of others. The resemblances are there in the core vocabulary, if you know where to look. Tamil and Hindi have no such relationship. There is no shared ancestor language connecting them at any recoverable point in history. They built their grammars independently, organized their sounds independently, and constructed their vocabularies independently. The Indo-European family, which covers most of North India, includes hundreds of languages across Europe, Iran, and South Asia. Sanskrit is the classical language of this family in the Indian subcontinent. Its modern descendants, Hindi, Urdu, Bengali, Punjabi, Marathi, Gujarati, Odia, Nepali, are called the Indo-Aryan languages, and they're spoken across a broad northern belt stretching from Pakistan through Bangladesh. The Dravidian family is different in almost every structural way. It covers 4 major literary languages, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam, plus dozens of smaller ones. Telugu has the most speakers, around 95 million. Tamil has the longest documented history. Kannada and Malayalam each have tens of millions of speakers. Combined, the Dravidian family represents one of the largest language families in Asia, and it exists almost entirely within the Indian subcontinent. Almost. That almost is one of the most important clues in the whole story. There is a Dravidian language spoken in the Balochistan region of Pakistan, far in the northwest of the subcontinent. It is called Brahui. It has roughly 2 to 4 million speakers, surrounded entirely by Indo-European and Iranian languages, with the nearest major Dravidian language, Telugu, over 1,000 miles away. Brahui is linguistic evidence of something that used to be true and no longer is. The Dravidian family once extended much further north than it does today. Brahui is a remnant, a community that stayed put while everything around it changed. This matters because it helps answer the question of sequence. Which family was in the subcontinent first? The current mainstream view among linguists and historians is that Dravidian languages were present across a much larger area of the Indian subcontinent before the arrival of Indo-Aryan languages around 1500 BCE. The Indo-Aryan migrations, which brought an early form of Sanskrit, moved into a landscape that already had Dravidian-speaking populations. Over time in the north, Indo-Aryan languages spread and Dravidian languages receded. In the south, they held. Brahui isolated in the northwest, is the most geographically distant surviving marker of how far the family once reached. This is a contested area of scholarship. The specifics of who was where and when and how the transitions happened are still debated. But the existence of Brahui, combined with the internal evidence of Sanskrits, points clearly in one direction. Dravidian was here first, and Indo-Aryan arrived into a landscape it didn't create. Here is the clearest linguistic evidence that two families were in contact, and that one of them was already established when the other arrived. Sanskrit has a set of consonants called retroflex consonants. To produce a retroflective sound, you curl your tongue tip up and back towards the roof of your mouth. These sounds, in Hindi, the ones that sound harder or deeper than their dental equivalents, are retroflex. English doesn't have them. Neither does Persian, neither does Greek, neither does any other Indo-European language in Europe or the Middle East. But Dravidian languages are full of them. Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam. Retroflex consonants are central to how those languages are built. They're native to the Dravidian sound system. The leading explanation among linguists is that early Sanskrit speakers coming into contact with Dravidian-speaking populations gradually absorbed retroflex consonants into their language because the people around them used it. It's called substratum influence, when an earlier language leaves a mark on a later arriving one. The early population shifts to the new language, but carries some of the phonology of their original tongue with them. This is the same mechanism that gave French its nasal vowels. Celtic speakers adopted Latin, but kept their nasal pronunciation, as we covered in the Spanish-Portuguese episode. It happens whenever two language communities are in sustained close contact, and one gradually shifts to the other. In Sanskrit's case, the retroflex consonants are a signature, a trace left by the Dravidian languages that were already in place when Sanskrit arrived. Hindi inherited them. Bengali inherited them. Punjabi inherited them. Every modern Indo-Aryan language carries in the very sound system evidence of the contact that happened over 3,000 years ago. While most of the story of language contact is about absorption and blending, Tamil took a different path, and that path has a name: purism. Tamil has one of the longest literary traditions of any living language on earth. The Sangam literature, a body of classical Tamil poetry, dates to roughly 300 BCE through 300 CE. That is a documented literary tradition running over 2,000 years in a language still spoken by tens of millions of people today who can, with effort, read those original texts. Very few languages on earth can make that claim. And Tamil has been deliberate about protecting that tradition. As Sanskrit became the prestige language of learning and religion across the subcontinent, spreading through the Brahminical culture, temple scholarship, and royal courts, most Indian languages absorbed enormous quantities of Sanskrit vocabulary. Hindi is saturated with it. Bengali, Marathi, Gujarati, all of them took in Sanskrit loanwords in the thousands. Tamil resisted. Not entirely. Sanskrit loanwords exist in Tamil, particularly in religious and technical contexts. But the Tamil literary tradition consistently pushed back against Sanskrit's dominance in a way that most other Indian languages did not. There were active scholarly movements to coin Tamil words for new concepts rather than borrow Sanskrit ones, to elevate the classical Tamil tradition as equal to, or older than, Sanskrit's claims to authority, and to maintain Tamil's grammatical distinctness. The grammar text that codified classical Tamil, the Tolkappiyam, is itself extraordinary. It's one of the oldest surviving grammars of any language in the world, predating most Sanskrit's grammatical texts. It describes phonology, morphology, and poetics with a sophistication that makes clear Tamil had a rich formal tradition entirely independent of Sanskrit influence. Tamil's purest instinct wasn't just cultural pride. It was a defense of a linguistic identity that was genuinely different, structurally, historically, and genealogically, from the Indo-Aryan tradition that was expanding around it. The ancient family divide between Indo-Aryan and Dravidian did not stay in the past. It moved into the 20th century with full force and produced two of the most significant movements of the linguistic protest in Indian history. The first came in 1937, before Indian independence. The Congress-led government in the Madras Presidency, under Chief Minister C. Rajagopalachari, introduced a policy making Hindi compulsory in schools across the province. The reaction in Tamil-speaking areas was immediate and intense. Protests broke out across the region. The agitation lasted roughly 2 years. 2 people died in police actions during demonstrations. The policy was eventually withdrawn in 1940 under pressure from the protests and from Mahatma Gandhi's intervention. The second came in 1965, after independence, when a constitutional provision came into effect that was understood in South India as making Hindi the sole official language of the Union. This triggered a much larger agitation, particularly in what was then Madras state. Protests, hurdles, and violent clashes with police occurred across the state over several weeks. The official death toll, counting those killed in police firing and self-immolations, was in the dozens. Some accounts placed the total higher when accounting for all the violence during the period. The agitations of 1965 had lasting political consequences. They accelerated the rise of Dravidian political parties, the DMK in particular, which went on to dominate Tamil Nadu politics for decades. The agitations also produced a political settlement. English would continue as an official language of the Union alongside Hindi, and no state would be compelled to adopt Hindi as a sole medium of administration. The settlement did not resolve the underlying tension. Debates over language policy and education and government employment examinations in the courts continue in India today. The specific form of the conflict changes. The root of it does not. The root is what this whole video is about. 2 language families separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles of linguistic genealogy were brought together inside one political boundary. How a modern state navigates that boundary is not a problem any ancient migration created an answer for. So here is what the map of Indian languages actually shows. 2 unrelated families, as far apart at the root as English and Arabic, sharing a subcontinent. The Dravidian South, almost certainly the earlier resident, its languages traceable in literature for over 2 millennia, its sound system visible in the very consonants of Hindi. The Indo-Aryan North, carrying a written tradition in Sanskrit that became one of the most influential language systems in Asian history. Its arrival traceable in the retroflex sounds it picked up from the people who were already there. They didn't merge. They didn't replace each other. They coexisted unequally, with tension, across an enormous range of contact points for 3,000 years. They're still coexisting. The evidence is in Brahui, stranded in Balochistan. It's in Tamil's classical literature, the oldest continuously read poetry in the subcontinent. It's in the retroflex consonants of Hindi, which are Dravidian sounds wearing Indo-Aryan clothes. And it's in the political history of modern India, which has been negotiating the consequences of this divide in every generation since independence. Languages don't just describe history. They are history. Every sound that survived, every word that was borrowed, every feature that one family picked up from the other, it's all evidence, still legible, still there. The line between North and South runs through the dictionary. Now you know what drew it. If this sent you towards any of these languages, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Airlearn has them. The link's in the description. See you in the next one.